When she said, "I'm making a pros and cons list about our relationship," she told me to leave the room so she could think clearly. I heard her laughing on the phone with her friend, saying, "He's so clueless." She didn't know I was writing my own list. It had one word: done. I left her a note right beside hers. She never finished reading mine. When I walked into our apartment that Thursday evening, I knew something was off the second I saw her face. Samantha was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, papers spread out, highlighters lined like surgical tools. Her candle was burning, the one she only lit when she wanted control of the atmosphere. "Hey," I said, hanging my jacket. "You okay?" She didn't even look up. "We need to talk." Those words hit harder than a slap. I sat across from her. The table between us felt like a border. She finally looked at me, eyes glassy and dead serious. "I'm making a pros and cons list about our relationship." I laughed, then stopped when I saw she wasn't joking. "You're what?" "Dr. Ellis says it's important that I evaluate compatibility in a rational way. I've been doing a lot of therapy work on attachment styles, emotional needs, future planning." Her therapist, the one I paid half for, even though she never let me meet him because she said therapy was her safe space. "So," I said slowly, "you're writing a list about whether to keep me or not." She nodded, calm as a surgeon about to make the first incision. "Basically, yes. I need to make an informed decision without your energy influencing my thought process. So I need you to leave for a few hours." "You want me to leave my own apartment?" "It's not personal. It's self-work." She said it like she was reading a script she'd memorized. I stood there, staring at the woman I'd spent 3 years loving, the one I thought I'd propose to next spring, and realized she was treating me like a project evaluation. "How long do you need?" I asked. "For maybe 5 hours." She smiled, relieved. "Thank you for being understanding, Ben." I nodded, grabbed my keys, and left. But I didn't drive far. I sat in the coffee shop parking lot, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at the reflection of my own stunned face in the window. My girlfriend of 3 years had turned our relationship into a dataset, and something inside me broke. I opened the Notes app on my phone and created my own list. Title: Pros and Cons of This Relationship. I typed one word: done. Then I drove back. When I stepped in, she had her AirPods in, focused music playing, candle still burning. She didn't even notice me. I moved quietly, packed a duffel bag, my documents, laptop, and the essentials. While she sat there analyzing whether I was worth keeping, I was already gone. Before I left, I airdropped her my list, just one screenshot with that single word: done. Then I set my keys on the counter, closed the door behind me, and walked away. At 9:18 p.m., she texted, "I'm done with my list. We need to talk." Then, "Ben, this is really immature. You can't just leave because I asked for space." Then, "You're sabotaging my healing process." I turned off my phone, and for the first time in months, I slept through the night. But when I woke up the next morning, there were 31 messages waiting for me. Not all from her. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Her best friend, her mother, even her therapist. And that's when I realized she wasn't just making a list. She was rewriting the entire story. When I first met Samantha, she didn't talk like this. She wasn't all processing, emotional regulation, and alignment. She was just real, funny, a little intense, and dangerously smart. We met in Austin at a trivia night my roommate dragged me to. She was on the opposing team and wiped the floor with everyone. I remember thinking, she's out of my league, but I'm gonna try anyway. It worked. Back then, she was a paralegal with a chaotic laugh, a messy apartment, and a thing for cold brew and true crime. We clicked fast. Within 6 months, she moved into my place, my one-bedroom downtown apartment that suddenly felt too small but too right. She said she loved how grounded I was, how I didn't chase money or status. "I need someone stable," she told me once, curling into me on the couch. "Someone who keeps me calm." But somewhere between month 12 and 24, that same calmness became boring. That's when she started therapy with Dr. Ellis. I didn't question it at first. She said she wanted to deal with her anxiety. But the way she started talking after a few sessions, it was like she'd downloaded a new personality. Everything became therapy speak. Everything became work. She'd say things like, "I'm feeling emotionally stagnant in our dynamic," instead of, "I'm unhappy," or, "I think we're operating from mismatched attachment frameworks," when what she meant was, "You didn't text me back fast enough." I thought she was growing, evolving. What I didn't see then was that therapy was giving her new words to justify the same need for control she'd always had. I should have known it was changing when she started keeping that leather-bound journal everywhere she went. Her emotional audit log, she called it. She'd write down every disagreement we had, labeling them by emotional triggers and behavioral patterns. I joked once, asking if I could get a copy for review. She didn't laugh. But the real shift happened the night we talked about marriage. It was last February. We were sitting on the balcony watching the city lights, and I brought it up casually, that I'd been thinking about proposing. She went quiet for a long time, then said, "I don't know if we're aligned yet. I still have a lot of processing to do before I can commit to something permanent." Processing. Always processing. That was the night I started to pull back. I stopped trying to fix whatever invisible thing was wrong. I figured she just needed time. Turns out, she was doing something worse. She was preparing a case. I found out later that Dr. Ellis had encouraged her to collect data about how she felt in our relationship. She took that literally. She'd been making notes about my reactions, my tone, my habits, 3 months of emotional bookkeeping, building a spreadsheet of me. She wasn't trying to decide whether to love me. She was trying to decide whether to replace me. And I didn't know it yet, but the moment she asked me to leave that night, her list wasn't about compatibility. It was about justification. Because Samantha had already made her choice. The list was just the alibi. Friday morning, I woke up at my brother's place to a phone vibrating nonstop. 31 notifications. Half of them from Samantha. The other half from people who apparently thought they'd been drafted into a crisis intervention team. Her best friend, Jenna, was the loudest. "You can't just abandon her like that. She was trying to do emotional work. She's sobbing. You're cruel." I didn't respond. I just sat there drinking burnt coffee while my brother leaned against the counter, eyebrows raised. "What the hell did you do?" he asked. I told him everything. The list. The forced alone time. My one-word response. He whistled. "That's cold, man." She wanted to treat me like an experiment. I just ended the trial early. At 11:07 a.m., my desk phone rang. The one that almost never rings. "Hello, Benjamin? This is Susan, Samantha's mother." Oh God. She launched into me before I could say a word. "How dare you walk out on my daughter when she's trying to better herself?" "She was evaluating whether I'm good enough for her," I said. "She has anxiety, Benjamin. You know that. She needs to process things carefully. She can process them without me." Click. By noon, her father called too. Then her therapist. Yeah, her therapist. An email popped up. "Hello, Benjamin. This is Dr. Ellis. Samantha provided your contact as an emergency measure. I'd like to schedule a joint session to process this rupture." Rupture? Jesus. It sounded like he was talking about a surgery gone wrong. I deleted the email, blocked the address. That evening, when I pulled up to my brother's house, her car was already there. She was sitting on the steps like a ghost waiting for entry. "We need to talk," she said, standing as I got out. "No, we really don't. Ben, you can't just leave like that. You were about to throw away 3 years. You were literally deciding whether to throw them away. I just saved you the trouble." She folded her arms, defensive. "That's not what I was doing. I was clarifying my feelings." Dr. Ellis said, "I cut her off." "You mean the guy you've been texting after hours?" Her eyes went wide. "What?" "Yeah." I'd seen the texts 2 weeks earlier. She left her laptop open once. Messages popping up on her screen from a contact named DE at the time. I thought it was some friend or coworker, but I remembered a few lines that didn't sound like therapist talk. You deserve someone who understands your worth. He's emotionally stagnant. Don't let comfort trap you. You're glowing lately. Keep standing in your truth. First, I brushed it off. Maybe therapists use affirmations. But after reading that last message, I realized it wasn't clinical. It was personal. Too personal. She blinked, pretending not to understand. You went through my messages? No. You left them open. I didn't snoop. I just saw enough to know Dr. Ellis isn't just your therapist anymore. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because you sure changed fast after you started seeing him. Suddenly everything was about your growth and my inadequacy. Her face twisted, guilt mixed with anger. You're twisting things. You're trying to shame me for healing. I'm not shaming you. I'm just saying if the guy helping you heal is also flirting with you, that's not therapy. That's manipulation. She didn't answer. Her silence said everything. My brother opened the door then, sensing the tension. Everything okay out here? We're fine, she said quickly. We're not fine, I said. She was just leaving. Her jaw clenched. You're going to regret this. I didn't answer. I just watched her walk to her car, tears threatening but not falling. She slammed the door so hard the echo carried down the street. The next day, I found out she'd told her parents I was emotionally abusive. 2 days later, her therapist, the same one who'd been texting her, posted something cryptic on his professional Twitter. Some people mistake control for love. Healing means knowing when to walk away. It got hundreds of likes. And then one of the likes was hers. That's when I knew this wasn't just a breakup. It was a setup. And she wasn't planning to move on. She was planning to ruin me. By Monday morning, the Whisper campaign had already started. Coworkers were side-eyeing me in the break room. One of them finally said what everyone else was thinking. Hey, is it true you and your girlfriend broke up because you were emotionally controlling? I laughed, bitter. Who told you that? He shrugged. Her friend posted something about toxic partners on Facebook. Didn't name names, but, Yeah, I knew. Samantha was building a narrative. By noon, the HR rep called me in for a quick check-in. Apparently, they'd received a complaint from a concerned acquaintance that I might be going through emotional issues at home that could impact my professional performance. The language was clinical, rehearsed. I'd heard it before. It sounded just like her therapist's phrasing. That night, I sat in my car outside my apartment for nearly an hour before going inside. Everything felt heavier, darker. I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't just dealing with an ex. I was dealing with someone who'd already weaponized her story before it was even over. So I started digging, and what I found changed everything. It started with a name, Dr. Andrew Ellis. I Googled him. Official website, headshot, list of credentials. Looked normal enough. Except there was one weird thing. His license number didn't match the one listed on the Texas Board of Behavioral Health database. At first, I thought maybe I mistyped it. But no. His license belonged to someone else, an actual therapist who practiced 3 counties away. My stomach dropped. So who the hell was Dr. Ellis? I kept digging. Found his LinkedIn. The man's real name was Andrew Keller, and he wasn't a licensed therapist. He'd completed 2 years of a psychology master's program, dropped out, and started his own emotional wellness consulting practice online. Translation, he was a self-taught fraud. And Samantha had been paying him $150 a session to help her heal. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was buried in a photo album on his public Facebook. A few nights back, he'd posted a group selfie from a wellness retreat outside Austin. There she was, Samantha, standing beside him, in yoga pants and a tank top, holding a wine glass, smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. The timestamp? 2 weeks before she asked me for space. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the screen, feeling the air go out of my lungs. That's when it all clicked. The list, the therapy, the sudden need for clarity. She wasn't evaluating me. She was preparing to replace me. I scrolled through the comments on that photo. Most were generic. Beautiful people, such good energy. until I saw one from his account under hers. "You're radiant lately. Keep shining, Sam." And her reply, posted late that night, "Thanks, Drew. You make me feel seen again." That line kept repeating in my head. You make me feel seen again. I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking, but not from sadness, from clarity. She hadn't fallen out of love. She traded up, or at least she thought she had. And she wasn't just sleeping with her therapist. She was conspiring with him to make sure if I ever spoke up, I'd sound like the bitter ex trying to smear her healing journey. I wanted to confront her right then, but something in me, something cold and rational, stopped me. Because suddenly, I didn't want to confront her. I wanted to bury her story before she buried mine. So instead of calling her, I called a friend, David, a software engineer who owed me a favor. I told him what I needed. Every public trace of her and this fake therapist connected online. I wanted screenshots, metadata, timestamps, everything. "Why?" he asked. "Because," I said, "if she's going to use a lie to ruin me, I'm going to use the truth to destroy her." That night, as I sat in the dark scrolling through those screenshots, one thought kept looping in my head. She thought she'd written the ending, but I hadn't even started my part yet. When the shock faded, anger moved in to take its place. Not the hot, blind kind that makes you do stupid things. A slow, methodical anger that thinks in lists and timestamps and receipts. I didn't want to hurt Samantha for the sake of hurting her. I wanted to make sure the story she'd already started to tell about me couldn't survive contact with the truth. So I built my plan like a case file. Step 1 was simple. Preserve everything. I had screenshots of the photo from Keller's retreat and the strange, personal messages on Samantha's laptop. David, the friend who owed me favors and could code better than half the security teams at my company, helped me pull metadata from those public posts. Timestamps, original image files, the accounts that had liked them. Nothing fancy, just the kind of raw proof that shows a pattern. I saved emails, text strings, thread replies, and the single airdrop receipt with "done" on it. I printed the receipts for the payments she'd made to Keller and circled the dates on a paper calendar. Step 2. Neutralize the therapist. I called him Andrew Keller and I kept my tone chill. I asked a few innocuous questions about his practice, then asked what certifications he held. He stumbled, said the word certificate instead of license. I asked him to confirm the name on his license. He laughed it off, said he was a trauma-informed wellness consultant, not a clinical psychologist. That's when I asked the one blunt, dangerous question. Are you bound by the same confidentiality ethics as a licensed therapist? He avoided it. That alone told me his whole brand of pseudo-pro help was a house built on pillows. I also contacted a real therapist friend, not to litigate but to ask a plain question. Would the things I'd seen in those messages look professional? Her answer was immediate and ugly. No. A therapist doesn't flirt and then tell a client they're radiant. That's malpractice and maybe criminal depending on what else was happening. She told me to document everything and file complaints with the State Board and Better Business Bureau. I did that the next morning. A crisp, calm email with copies attached. I included the retreat image and highlighted Keller's public posts, where he used unprofessional language. I filed the complaint under unlicensed practice and waited for the board to do what boards do. Ask questions. Step 3. Prepare defense for the inevitable smear campaign. I'd already seen the opening salvos, her friends, her parents, the therapist, all rehearsing the same language. Rupture, abuse, trauma. I wanted the people who mattered, mutual friends, my landlord, my workplace HR, to have a different set of facts in front of them if they were fed her version. I printed a one-page timeline, labeled clearly, dates, events, sources. I added photocopies of joint utility payments I'd made and bank statements that showed where rent came from. Not to prove financial ownership, to show how dishonest the demand letter claiming thousands of dollars looked when put beside the receipts. I shared that timeline with a small set of people I trusted. My brother, 2 mutual friends who'd witnessed us at our best, and my lawyer friend who'd laughed at the demand letter but still offered to represent me for free if it went anywhere. There is power in people having your version on paper before gossip reaches them. Step 4 was the hardest, the most personal. Bait. I didn't want a public fight. I wanted a moment of clarity where Samantha's own words would make the rest irrelevant. I set up a casual confrontation, not in anger, but in the way a detective sets a controlled line of questioning. I texted her one Saturday afternoon pretending to want to talk and maybe clear the air. She bit immediately. I used the exact tone she used to manipulate me. Calm, open, reasonable. And asked if she'd come by the apartment to retrieve a few sentimental things I thought she might still want. She agreed. I was ready for witnesses. My brother came over and sat in the living room. David parked down the street with his laptop open. My lawyer friend told me to keep it civil and only record audio if legal. I live in a one-party consent state, so I let the recorder roll on my phone. I didn't go in looking for confessions so much as fact-checking. Dates, the retreat, her relationships, Keller's involvement. I asked direct questions and followed what she said. When she minimized, "Drew's just a friend. He was supportive," I pressed. When she lied about the timeline, I pointed to the photo timestamp and let it sit there between us like a fact she couldn't rewrite on the fly. I knew the danger. Hearings, countersuits, the possibility that exposing one lie would just spawn 10 more. But I'd already watched her trade nuance for narratives. If I could get her to say the words, to admit she had been dating outside the relationship while using therapy as cover, it would undercut her whole victim story. And a recorded admission, backed up by the digital breadcrumbs we'd collected, would make that narrative very hard to sustain. The plan worked better than I'd expected and worse than I wanted. She did what she always did when cornered. She snapped into self-defense and then lashed out with accusations. She cried on cue. She called me cold, calculated, and cruel. Her friend Jenna came barging in uninvited, and my brother had to politely ask them to leave. But I had what I needed. Her half-answers, the deflections, and then one plain sentence I never thought she'd say aloud. A line that would become evidence in the small world that mattered to me. I walked her to the door, calm as I could be. She tried one last thing. "You're trying to ruin me." I said one word. "If you try to ruin me, I'll ruin the story you're telling." I said it not as a threat but as what it was. A promise. I sent the file to the state board. I copied it to Keller's business email complaining about his conduct, and I forwarded the timeline to my small circle. Within 48 hours, comments started appearing on Keller's photos questioning his credentials. An angry parent left a message for the retreat organizer asking whether client-therapist boundaries had been violated. The board wrote back acknowledging receipt. My lawyer friend said, "Don't celebrate. These things take time. But you did the right thing." I'd aimed to expose a pattern. I'd set traps precisely so the truth couldn't be dressed up as something else. But setting those traps opened another door I hadn't expected. A door that would rattle everything I thought I knew about Samantha, about Keller, and about who had been playing who. The case file on my kitchen table grew thicker. And with each page I added, my anger cooled into a steady insistence. If she wanted a war of narratives, she'd find the truth was harder to lie about than she thought. 3 days after I sent the complaint, I got an email from the Texas Behavioral Health Board. Subject line, "Inquiry regarding submitted report." I opened it expecting a bland acknowledgement. Something bureaucratic like, "We'll review this within 60 days. But instead, the first line froze me. "Mr. Keller is already under investigation for multiple boundary violations with female clients." I read it 3 times, pulse thudding in my neck. Multiple clients. Plural. The email went on to say they appreciated my documentation and requested any additional correspondence or screenshots that might help establish the timeline of unlicensed practice and coercive relationships. My hands went cold. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with some opportunistic guy who flirted with a client. Keller had a pattern. He was doing this to women who came to him for help, using therapy language as bait. And Samantha, she wasn't the first. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was what came next. 2 nights later, my brother called me from work. "Hey, dude, are you still home?" "Yeah." "Why?" "There's a woman here asking for you. Says her name's Rebecca. Says she needs to talk to you about Andrew Keller." I didn't know any Rebecca, but I told him to give her my number. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. She sounded tired, not angry, not frantic. Just hollow. "Hi. I'm sorry to call you like this," she said. "I got your number from the board investigator. They said you filed a complaint against Keller." "Yeah," I said cautiously. "You too. I was one of his clients. Last year." What she told me next made my skin crawl. She'd started seeing Keller for anxiety after a breakup. Within a month, he'd started complimenting her looks during sessions. Said she had radiant energy. Then he started calling her outside of appointments, telling her how special she was, how her ex never deserved her. By the third month, he'd crossed the line completely. She said she reported him, but the case had been dragging. Mine was the new evidence they'd needed to reopen it. I asked if she knew about Samantha. She sighed. Yes, he mentioned her once. Said he was seeing someone who understood him on a higher frequency. That line, higher frequency, made my stomach drop. Samantha used those exact words in one of her last texts to me. "You'll never understand what Drew and I have. It's a higher frequency connection." I hadn't realized it at the time, but she was parroting him. He'd gotten inside her head so deeply she didn't even have her own vocabulary anymore. Rebecca kept talking. "You're not the first partner he's destroyed. He gets close to these women, convinces them their boyfriends are toxic, then rewrites their reality until they leave. It's how he keeps control, by isolating them." And there it was, the truth that chilled me worse than anything she'd done. Samantha hadn't just betrayed me. She'd been groomed into believing she was healing while being manipulated by a fraud who fed off her need for validation. I felt sick, because for the first time, I saw it from outside the relationship. The therapy speak, the lists, the rehearsed lines, the obsession with clarity. None of it came from her. Came from him. But here's where it got darker. Rebecca sent me a copy of an old group chat from Keller's retreat. One of the messages was from him, dated just a week before Samantha asked me to leave that night. "Some people can't grow until they let go of dead weight. If you're serious about your evolution, cut the anchor." And under that, Samantha had replied, "I'm working on it." Thursday night. The same night she told me to leave so she could make her pros and cons list. That was the moment the entire picture came into focus. The list wasn't her idea. It was his. She'd been told to do it. Told to send me away. Told to decide if I was dead weight. All of it orchestrated by a man pretending to heal her. The rage that hit me then was different from before. Before, it was personal, about her betrayal. Now it was bigger. Someone had used the woman I loved as a puppet and weaponized her against me. I didn't sleep that night. I printed everything. The retreat photo, the chat log, Rebecca's messages, the timestamp texts. I built a folder 3 inches thick and dropped it at the board office in person the next morning. The receptionist looked up when I handed it over. "He ruined people," I said quietly. "Make sure he doesn't ruin anyone else." That afternoon, Samantha texted me for the first time in weeks. "Can we please talk? I'm scared. Everything's falling apart." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "You should be scared. Not of me, of who you've been trusting." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "What are you talking about?" And I realized then, she didn't know yet. She had no idea Keller was under investigation. No idea he'd already been exposed. That night, I got an email from the board again. "We appreciate your cooperation. The subject is currently suspended from all practice pending review. We will contact you if further testimony is required." I read it 3 times. Then I smiled, not the kind of smile that comes from victory, but the grim kind that comes from relief. The monster behind the curtain was finally cornered. But Samantha? She still thought I was the villain. And I wasn't about to let her keep believing that lie much longer. When Samantha finally reached me again, it was late on a Wednesday night. Her voice on the phone was unrecognizable. Quiet, stripped of the confident tone she always used to sound like she was winning an argument. "Ben," she said, barely above a whisper. Did you report Drew?" I didn't answer right away. I just listened to the way she said his name, like it still meant safety. Like she hadn't yet realized he'd been the danger all along. He's not a real therapist, Sam, I said finally. His license is fake. The board's already confirmed it. She let out this hollow, choked sound. That's not possible. He showed me everything. His office, his certificates. He forged them. I interrupted. And you're not the only one. There are other women. He's being investigated for manipulating clients. For a few seconds, there was nothing but her breathing, ragged, uneven. Then, suddenly, it cracked open into a sob. I thought he understood me, she said. He said you were emotionally abusive, that you were suppressing my potential. I leaned back on my couch, my hand trembling around the phone. That's what he does. He convinces you the people who love you are holding you back. It's how he keeps control. There was silence. Then she said something I'll never forget. He told me if I didn't end things with you, he'd stop helping me. He said you were toxic for my growth and that if I didn't choose myself, I'd never evolve. And I believed him. Her voice broke then, not just with shame but realization. He said the list would help me get closure, that I needed to make an objective assessment of emotional dead weight. I thought it was therapy. I thought it was healing. But he was the one writing the questions. I felt the world tilt slightly, because that meant the whole night, every word she'd said, every calm explanation about processing her feelings. None of it had been hers. He'd fed her the lines, scripted the whole thing like a performance. Sam, I said quietly. When did it stop being therapy? She sniffed. The retreat. He told me we'd just meditate. But then he kissed me. I told him it was wrong, that I had you, and he said, you don't owe loyalty to someone who's keeping you small. And I don't know why I believed that. I hated myself afterward. But he said it was part of my awakening. He made me feel like I'd done something brave. I closed my eyes. It made sense now, the hollow look in her eyes that night, the detachment. She wasn't making a choice between me and her future. She was already trapped inside someone else's idea of freedom. She kept talking, words spilling out like confession. He said you'd never forgive me for what I did, so I had to make you look bad first. He told me to talk to my friends, my parents, make them see how emotionally unavailable you were. He said I had to build a narrative before you could turn people against me. My stomach twisted. So that's why your mom called, why your friends blew up my phone. He told me you'd lash out and prove his point, she whispered. And when you left that night, I thought he was right. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But the longer she talked, the more it sounded like she'd been living in a controlled experiment she didn't know she'd signed up for. You have to understand, she said, crying now. He made me feel special. He said I was his favorite client, that I had more potential than anyone else. I thought he was helping me become better. I didn't realize he was just breaking me down so he could be the one to rebuild me. I sat there in the dark, listening to her come undone, and all I could think was how twisted it was. She'd betrayed me, yes. She'd humiliated me, slandered me, tried to ruin me. But she'd done it because someone had convinced her that was healing. She'd handed over her judgment, her conscience, her loyalty, all to a man who saw her as raw material. She whispered. He said you were a placeholder, that real love comes after the purge. That's why I made the list. I thought I was purging you. It hit me like a punch, because I realized then that every cruel thing she'd said in those last weeks, every accusation, every therapy-flavored insult, wasn't really her voice. It was his echoing through her. The real reason she betrayed me wasn't ambition or boredom. It was indoctrination. He'd convinced her that love was something you earned through pain, that cutting people off was strength, that she could only grow by destroying what made her feel safe. That was the horror of it. She wasn't just manipulated. She was rewritten. By the time she stopped talking, both of us were silent for a long time. Finally, she asked, "What happens now?" I didn't have an answer. I wanted to tell her I forgave her, but I didn't. I wanted to tell her I still loved her, but I couldn't. All I could say was, "Now you tell the truth, to everyone." And she did, or tried to. But when she started telling people the real story, no one believed her. The same therapist she'd defended was now on the news as a fraud facing multiple misconduct charges. Her friends ghosted her. Her parents stopped answering calls, embarrassed by the fallout. By the end of that week, she'd lost her job at the firm. Too much drama, they said. Her lease ended. She moved back with her mom. Every piece of the life she'd been trying to elevate crumbled. And me? I stayed quiet, because revenge wasn't about shouting. It was about waiting. I knew the truth was finally doing what I couldn't. The news broke 2 weeks later. Self-proclaimed therapist arrested for fraud and misconduct. His mugshot sat right there on the homepage of the Austin Chronicle. Andrew Keller, aka Dar. Drew Ellis, charged with practicing without a license, falsifying credentials, and engaging in inappropriate relationships with clients. It was the kind of headline that stops you mid-scroll. And under it, a list of the women he'd manipulated. Samantha's initials were there, buried halfway down. That same morning, she called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. They put my name in the article. I saw. I didn't know it would go public, she said, breath shaking. My mom won't even talk to me. Everyone at work knows. Jenna blocked me. I didn't say anything. I just let the silence sit there. Then she said it, the one sentence she never would have said back then. You were the only one who ever actually cared about me. Weren't you? I didn't lie. I was. She started to cry. You must hate me. I don't, I said. But I don't want anything from you either. There was a pause. Then she asked, what are you going to do now? Move on. And that was it. The last time we spoke. But the story didn't end there. The board investigator called a few days later to thank me for my evidence. Said my file had helped push the case forward. Apparently, several of the other women had been too scared to speak until they learned someone else had come forward. My documentation gave them leverage. One of them even emailed me to say thank you for being the first to stop him. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That weekend, I packed up the last of her things. The candle, the old journal, the leather-bound relic of her growth. I boxed it all up and drove to the Riverwalk downtown. Opened the box, dropped it in the recycling bin outside a bookstore we used to visit together. Watched it disappear through the slot. It wasn't about destroying it. It was about putting it somewhere ordinary, somewhere it wouldn't have power anymore. On the drive home, I felt something lift. A weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying since that night she told me to leave my own apartment. It wasn't victory. It was freedom. And in the weeks that followed, life started to feel real again. The walls of my apartment didn't echo with arguments or apologies. I repainted the living room a lighter color. Adopted a dog from a shelter, a brown mutt who slept through storms and snored like a truck engine. Named him Chance. People at work stopped whispering once the truth about Keller came out. A few even apologized for believing the rumors. HR quietly deleted the performance check-in. The same co-workers who used to avoid me started inviting me out for drinks again. I went once. It was fine. Then, one Sunday morning, while I was walking Chance down Congress Avenue, I saw her, Samantha, standing outside a coffee shop, wearing the same gray coat she'd worn the night of the list. Her hair was shorter, her eyes tired. She saw me too. For a second, it was like time froze. Just two people who'd burned each other's lives down and were standing in the ashes. She smiled weakly, the kind that carries more apology than words. I nodded once. That was all. No words, no closure speech, no dramatic ending. Just acknowledgement. Then I walked away. Because closure isn't a conversation. It's a choice. By the time I got back to my apartment, the morning sun had turned the walls gold. I sat on the floor next to Chance, coffee in hand, scrolling through the local news one last time. Another headline, Victims of Keller Speak Out. One woman rebuilds after losing everything. It was her, Samantha, telling her story, finally using her real voice. No therapist, no manipulation, just truth. I didn't feel angry reading it. I just felt done. Truly done. She lost her image, her circle, her false clarity. I lost 3 years and a few illusions. But what I gained was something she'd never understand. Peace that doesn't need an audience. So when people ask me what I learned from it, I keep it simple. If someone ever needs a list to decide whether you're worth keeping, don't wait for them to finish it. Make your own. And keep it short. One word, done.